Hello everyone, my name is Eva Marti. I'm a PhD student at the Economics Department at the University of Lausanne in Switzerland. And today I'm going to present to you a sketch of an upcoming project that is somewhat similar in terms of research question and also context, but with a different subpopulation as the one that Josephine just presented. This is going to be a joint project with Dr. Radha Paudel, who already spoke in a panel in the morning that many of you might know. And of course, my supervisor, Sonia Faulkner and Rustam Hakim. The tentative title of the project is Menstrual Practices and Female Mobility in Farming Households in Nepal. Why that focus on agriculture? So first of all, it was rather practical a decision because I am funding through a project on agriculture. So that's why I started from that angle. And I was primarily interested in gendered labor division and gendered patterns of mobility. And that's how I came across menstruation in the first place. And understood it was quite an interesting factor. Many of you know that menstruation has been a taboo that has called for some form of ritualized treatment in many, if not most areas of the world in the past and still as of now. In many areas, there is a mental model that considers women as being contaminating when they menstruate. And in the context of Nepal that I will look at least to start with, that's very much the case. What is special about agricultural context that, of course, if you're considered to be polluting, you may potentially pass on that pollution to objects that can, like food, that can then be ingested by others, as well as, of course, the people you work with. So that's why in agricultural context, in addition to those restrictions that we sometimes hear of that pertain more to the religious spaces, for example, or maybe the house, in agricultural context, we have that additional sort of economic domain that is potentially also affected. So examples of that could be, for example, that you should touch certain crops, certain flowers, fruits that are used for like offering, which is offering that you shouldn't milk cows, restrictions on cooking and restrictions on touching others, which could also mean that you shouldn't go to the market, for example, to sell your produce because it could contaminate people. Now I'm focusing on Nepal, but it's important that there is lots of literature that shows similar restrictions are around all over the world. My mother-in-law, who is Sardinian, told me that she was told not to repot flowers or not to make a dough when she's menstruating by older women when she was a child. So these are things that have been around and are probably still floating around also here in some contexts. Now, when it comes to researchers, to my knowledge, nothing that specifically looks at agriculture. So that's how I hope I will contribute something to that. As Madison, I think, also just said, there's very little about adults in general. It's valid to work with the young generation, but I think it's also important to work with adults, also because they're often the ones that sort of carry forward those norms. What do we, and in terms of interventions, there's, as has been mentioned by several people already, there's been lots of emphasis on products and hygiene. And we believe that if you have a mental model of menstruation being polluted, it can be problematic if you reinforce the concept of hygiene, because people just think that, oh, I have to adhere even stronger to such restrictions if you don't really sort of deconstruct the idea behind it. So that's why we would like to focus on an approach that has been tested for decades by the Global South Coalition for Dignified Menstruation, led by Radha Paudel, who works very much with sort of the agency of people. So they really usually work through a series of workshops where they talk women through their menstrual experiences and sort of through repeated interaction also as a group, lead people to sort of find new ways of how to deal with their bodies and also how to include their environment. Now, what we would like to do is to sort of theorize a little bit also on the mechanisms that Josephine also mentioned. So what are social norms? What are individual beliefs? Where is it? Who are the enforcers of those social norms? Is it the elders? Is it the religious people? And how do I deal with this? What we would like to do, I did some exploratory qualitative fieldwork this spring, where I conducted some key involvement interviews and focus group discussions with different men and women of different backgrounds. And now based on that, we're currently in a process together with Radha to design those workshops. And then we would eventually like to run quite a big randomized control trials where we have a group that gets treated within 2 different treatments and a group that is a control that doesn't receive any treatment, and then try to rigorously also measure the outcomes to build a bit more that evidence base that is also needed to get more funding from policymakers eventually. I'm running out of time already, but just 2 quick things that I found in the fieldwork was when it came to the impact of those practices on agriculture. It seemed that women didn't, of course, stop working, but they would usually switch to different tasks. So because they were not allowed to maybe water certain crops or sell them or something, they would, and they couldn't cook also, so they would often switch to tasks that didn't involve anything that could be polluted, for example, cutting grass, or they would carry around stones, and this would typically be very strenuous work, which they disliked. So that would be something that I would like to look into as an outcome. And then, as I said already, in terms of the mechanisms, there are those different channels. One that I find quite interesting is the identity one, in the sense that some women just believe that they would like to continue doing something because it connects them with their forefathers, and I think that's something that's sort of important to also consider. Thank you.